There are times in Excel when you would wish not to see as many decimal places as you might be getting. Now we can control that with formatting or with a formula. There is a slight difference when you deal with one or the other. Taking our round workbook as our example working file, you'll see that we've got a list of numbers, various decimal places, 22.5, 23.5678, and down the list to 29.578. Now it may be that I would just wish to see this list of numbers with 2 decimal places. Well, I can highlight them and change the formatting, either using the simple quick options here to decrease or increase. We want to decrease the decimal places. Now, they've all gone down to none because they were all different, but we can then push them out 2 decimal places very easily. What that doesn't do though is physically change the value of the cell. If I click back in, although I can only see 23.57, the cell does actually contain 23.5678. So much so that if I then add in a multiplier, let's say by 100, so we take the cell there, multiply by 100, and then we replicate that to do that to all of them. You can then see that although we can see here 23.57, multiplying by 100 gives me a result of 2356.78. So those decimal places are actually still there, they're just not visible. Now sometimes that's not what you're after. You're not after just hiding the extra decimal place values. You're actually after getting rid of them and physically rounding the numbers. So if I take these numbers again and copy and just paste them over here, and we'll call them numbers 2. I'm actually going to reset the decimal places by setting the number format to general, so then I see what's actually in the cell. And to make them go to 2 decimal places so that they look like this and are actually treated like that, we're going to use the round function. Equals round, open brackets, same layout as any of the other functions we've used so far, requiring 2 parameters. One is the number to round, well it's that cell there, comma, and then to how many decimal places. Well, we want to go to 2 digits, close brackets and return, and you see we get 22.5. Now unlike the formatting, where we formatted to 2 decimal places, and therefore we get 2 decimal places, 22.50, here we're simply rounding to 2 decimal places. If there isn't 2 decimal places, as there isn't here, we see the same, 22.5. Let's replicate this down the list, however, and we then see what effectively look like the same numbers as here. 23.57, 23.53, 24.47, 29.58. If I then do the multiplier, which is this column here, and we use our little relativeness, so we need a gap between, so a gap between and there, and paste should mean I get my multiplier in here. Multiplying these by 1,000 then gives me the whole numbers. So these numbers actually multiplied by 1,000, whereas here I see the hidden decimal places. By using the round function, there is no hidden decimal places. So round is a better option to use here than the formatting, which simply hides those extra decimal places. They both round for display purposes the same way. That is, if the digit you're looking to round, for example here, we want to round to 2 decimal places, so it goes to 2 and then looks at the third to decide what to do with the second. And it says actually the third decimal place is a 7, which is higher than 5, well it's more than or equal to 5, therefore I need to increase the second decimal place by 1, which is why I see 23.57. I also see 23.57 here when formatting to 2 decimal places, because it effectively deals with the formatting in the same way as rounding does for display purposes, but the rounding does actually chop the number. 23.53, now the third digit is 2, so that's less than 5, therefore it doesn't round up, so I'm left with 53. 46.58 becomes 47 because the 5 causes the 6 to round up. 578 becomes 58, 8 causes the 7 to round up. So 5 or above in the next digit that's going to be effectively truncated causes, in our case here, the second digit to be rounded up. If it's under 5, then it gets rounded down. Now if we were to change the number of decimal places we were interested in to 3 and then replicate that as well, you can see it then looks at the 4th digit to decide whether to round up. Now the 4th digit here is an 8, so that causes that 7 to go to 8, you can see that there. Fourth here is a 1, the 2 doesn't get increased. Fourth here is an 8, so that causes that 5 to go to 6, and it is in 6. And in here we haven't got a fourth decimal place, so we see all 3 decimal places. There is therefore a knock-on effect to our multiply by 100, because we then see the last decimal place here, which is the third, as the first, because we've effectively moved the decimal place 2 places when multiplying by 100. Now, if you're happy letting Excel make the decision on when to round up and when to round down, and you're happy with how and when, then that's fine. The round function works for you. There are 2 other functions in this same little family, and that's round up and round down. So if you actually want to force the rounding to go up or down, then you can use one of these other functions. So let's just insert a couple of columns and call one round up and one round down. And then we can place our round up and round down functions in here, which is equals round up, which means it will round up our number regardless of the value of the next decimal place. So let's stick with 2, which obviously has no effect on our 22.5 because there aren't 2 decimal places. But when we replicate down, these are now all rounding up. So our 5, 6, 7, 8 becomes 57, which it would with normal round anyway. But our 5, 3, 2, 1 becomes 54, which it wouldn't do with normal round. 4, 6, 5, 8 becomes 4, 7, which it would. And 5, 7, 8 becomes 5, 8, which it would. Now with round down, we're forcing it to round down. The same parameters, the number we're looking at changing, and how many digits. Well, let's stay with 2. Again, 22.5 does not get affected at 2 decimal places. All the others will now be rounded down, which effectively means truncate. So 5, 6, 7, 8 becomes 5, 6. The 7, 8 is ignored. We're not rounding up, we're rounding down, so we're chopping off 53 becomes 53, 4, 6, 5, 8 becomes 46, 5, 7, 8 becomes 5, 7. So depending on the end result you're after, if you're happy to stick with round and let it decide when to round up and when to round down based on whether it's greater than or equal to 5 or less than 5, or whether you want to force up or force down, in which case you can round up and round down with the round up and round down functions. So that's how to control the rounding in Excel instead of just formatting, where formatting does not change the underlying number.